Not harem, not routine, not invincible, not systematic, not brainless, not satisfied with writing, those who mind should enter with caution. The ancient Immortal Court has fallen into ruins, and the former immortals have fallen into slumber. Rapid changes, ever-changing seas and fields, all of which exist only in mythology from ancient times. Thousands of years later, the ruins of the Immortal Court once again towered over the 9 heavens, and the sleeping immortals continued to revive. The headless deity walks in the void, while rusty iron bars softly mourn. The distance between immortals and mortals is getting closer and closer. When people's hearts are filled with flames of desire, attempting to approach gods and seek skin from tigers, a madman in the world, riding a carriage and walking in the wasteland, has become a taboo in people's mouths. Chapter 1. We Bet Your Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hello, may I ask if a psychologist is available? The dilapidated store was slowly pushed open, accompanied by the harsh sound of old wooden doors. Su-yang, with a cheerful smile, extended his head and curiously looked around. A muscular man walked out of the bathroom and looked at Su-yang's position, with a hint of panic in his eyes. He instinctively glanced at the bathroom and hurriedly closed the door. It's closed today. The strong man responded calmly, accompanied by his speech, as the scar on his cheek, resembling a centipede, wriggled gently, appearing somewhat ferocious. Are you a psychologist? Su-yang suddenly nodded and walked into the store. I said it's closed today, don't you understand? Watching Su-yang's actions, the strong man furrowed his brows slightly, with a hint of coldness in his words, and his right hand casually draped around his waist. I understand, but I'm sick. Su-yang's smile suddenly narrowed and he looked seriously into the strong man's eyes, saying seriously, the duty of a doctor is to save lives and heal the wounded. Are you going against your professional spirit? Are you threatening me? At this moment, the atmosphere in the small psychological counseling clinic was deadlocked. The air is filled with the smell of gunpowder. Of course not. I'm just a poor patient. Su-yang, who had a serious expression in the previous second, once again smiled brightly and said, if I don't receive treatment, I will die. Must be today. The strong man's voice was somewhat deep. Su-yang nodded and looked at the old clock hanging on the wall with a hint of contemplation. It won't take you too long, just 27 minutes, 31 seconds. Looking at Su-yang's obviously abnormal mental state, the strong man seemed somewhat apprehensive. Black Street. This gathers all the dark places of Shanghai City, and no one inside can be underestimated. The strong man's gaze swept in the direction of self-defense, and finally nodded slowly. Sit down. He pointed to the tables and chairs placed at the window and spoke hoarsely. Thank you. Su-yang nodded in surprise and turned around unprepared in front of the strong man. Which chair should I choose? I'm so conflicted. Su-yang looked at the 2 chairs placed in the opposite direction with a puzzled expression, as if pondering a very serious question. The strong man appeared increasingly impatient, crossing over Su-yang with a cold face and sitting in one of them. It seems that you have made a choice for me. Su-yang seemed somewhat disappointed and sat on the remaining chair. Tell me, what's your problem? The strong man spoke coldly, looking completely different from a psychologist. Su-yang looked at him strangely and said, shouldn't you wear a white coat? Why am I wearing a white coat? The strong man suppressed his anger and responded in a low voice. Su-yang looked bewildered and said, in TV dramas, doctors are all wearing white coats. The strong man's eyebrows twitched, unable to contain the anger in his heart anymore. With a fierce look in his eyes, he shouted softly, but I am a psychologist. Accompanied by his anger, the scar on his face became even more terrifying. But Su-yang raised his hand and pointed to a white coat covered in dust hanging on the wall next to him, with an innocent expression on his face. But there are definitely some here. The strong man stared fixedly at Su-yang, his eyes full of murderous intent several times before finally suppressing it. With a gloomy face, he stood up without saying a word, took off his white coat, and draped it over his body. It just doesn't seem to fit well, it's a bit out of place. But Su Yang nodded in satisfaction and finally got to the point. Su Yang had a mysterious expression on his face and his voice was lowered. Do you believe there are immortals in this world? Ah. The strong man was stunned. I had a dream, a very long dream. This dream is particularly real, like seeing the future. Until last night, I suddenly woke up, those clear memories were like glass. Shattered. What remains in my mind are only a few images, the further back they go, the more blurry they become. Su Yang seemed to be recalling something, analyzing it, and slowly speaking. Oh, and then what? The strong man looked at the clock and found that there were still 10 minutes left until Su Yang's agreed time, so he casually perfunctorily passed it by. Although most of my memories have become blurred, I still vaguely remember that here is the starting point of my dreams. Su Yang has a great talent for storytelling and creates a great atmosphere. Starting point. The strong man finally showed some interest in his heart, sat up slightly straight, and for the first time actively asked. Su Yang's face once again burst into a smile, as warm as early morning sun. I cannot distinguish whether what I see is a dream or the future, so I need to verify. In that dream, at this moment, in this shop, a not innocent psychologist was murdered and robbed by a fugitive robber, and his body was hidden in the restroom. Then, the robber sat at the window, taking stock of the gains this time. Upon hearing Su Yang's words, the strong man's expression suddenly changed and he slammed the table, saying, "Are you playing with me? What did I play with you?" Su Yang was puzzled and looked at the angry strong man across from him in confusion. This is a black street, even people from the Lord's mansion can't reach here. The strong man spoke coldly, with a hint of cruelty flashing in his eyes. But soon, he sensed a hint of something was wrong. You're not from the Lord's mansion. No, it's not. I'm from the Black Street, indigenous people. Su Yang shook his head and said with a smile. Are you telling me this to seek death? The strong man sneered, completely removing his disguise, and took out a homemade pistol from his waist, aiming it at Su Yang's head. Su Yang's eyes were so clear and innocent. I've said it several times, I'm here to see a doctor. In fact, in my fragmented memory after waking up, half a minute later, a car that had been tampered with and lost control would crash into this wall. At that time, one of the chairs was smashed, which was the one you were sitting on in your dream. But now, I'm not sure which one it is. I forgot. Su Yang looked a bit disappointed and impatiently scratched his hair, but soon showed a smile again. Why don't we gamble? Now there are people sitting on both chairs, let's see. Who will die? Of course, if all of this is really just a dream, then we can all survive. Although discussing the issue of life and death, Su Yang's smile became increasingly lively. What a lunatic. The strong man sneered and rested his finger on the trigger. But Su Yang shook his head seriously and kindly reminded, believe me, this is the only way you can kill me. That gun won't work. Anyway. It's already fast. As he spoke, Su Yang lifted his head and ignored the strong man pointing his gun at him, his gaze fixed on the clock. Shoo, look. And the second hand slowly rotates and makes a crisp sound. 3, 2, 1. At the moment when the number reaches 1, bang. Suddenly, the engine roared violently in my ear, and the window burst open. Chapter 2. Admission. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A runaway car crashed into a wall, flying the strong man out, while Su Yang on the side was intact due to a distance difference of 20 centimeters. The strong man fell to the ground, his body constantly twitching, blood flowing down the corners of his mouth, his nostrils constantly overflowing, staining the ground red. His eyes were fixed on Su Yang, full of shock. His mouth slightly opened and closed, as if saying something, but he couldn't make a sound. In the end, this shocking emotion turned into the purest killing intent. The strong man trembled and lifted his hand, trying hard to aim the gun at Su Yang. It seems that my luck is better than yours. Although he had just brushed past the Grim Reaper, there was no sign of fear on Su Yang's face. He stood still, sighed and whispered, walking towards the strong man. I have said. A gun cannot kill me. Su Yang spoke softly, squatting in front of the strong man, with one foot still resting on his right arm, cutting off his last hope. Skull fracture. Crushed rib fracture, visceral bleeding should be severe. I can't save it anymore. Consistent with the state of death in dream. Looking at the injuries on the strong man's body, Su Yang kindly reminded him. Don't you look at me with such eyes. After all, I am the only doctor on Blackstreet with a medical qualification certificate, very professional. Blackstreet, the only doctor. Upon hearing the sound in his ear, the strong man's gradually relaxed eyes became relieved. On his deathbed, only a proverb from the Blackstreet came to mind. Blackstreet 3 no troubles. The fool on East Street, the cripple on West Street. The least troublesome thing is on Central Street. That crazy person. However, it is said that the madman has disappeared for half a year, and everyone is speculating that he died in a corner of the Blackstreet, but to their surprise the strong man completely closed his eyes and could no longer breathe. Oh my! He shouldn't be wearing this white coat. It's all blood, we can't take it anymore. Otherwise, if you go back and wash it, you'll still be able to use it. But when doctors see a doctor, they just need to wear a white coat. Su Yang stood still, once again caught up in self-entanglement. But soon, watching the house full of chaos, Su Yang's mood was quickly drawn to other things. So, isn't that really a dream? The bizarre world in the dream will eventually come. It's really something worth looking forward to. Next, follow the character in Dream to find that door. At this moment, Su Yang's eyes were so bright, revealing an excited smile. Thank you for everything you have done for my experiment. In the end, Su Yang expressed his gratitude to the body seriously, and then crawled into the hole in the wall that had been knocked open and disappeared into the street. It's strange that there was such a big commotion here, and the occasional passers-by around didn't even have the interest to come over and take a look at the excitement. They just took a quick glance and left indifferent, continuing to busy with their own affairs. As for the alarm, no one did it. A few seemingly young children quietly approached and crawled into the store. After a while, they came out with some excitement, cautiously looking around and running away. Damn it, there's an accident with the scar. A dilapidated residential building. A middle-aged man with a body size as thin as a monkey and a gloomy expression pushed open the door and walked back, telling everyone about the tragedy that had just occurred in the psychological counseling clinic. What? The red-haired young man sitting in the middle of the room stared and slammed the table, saying, on the Autumn Water Bank side, Scar has always been responsible for trampling on him. He's dead, how can the action continue? Red Hair appeared somewhat irritable, with an uncontrollable murderous aura in his eyes. Looking at the state of Red Hair, a hint of fear flashed in the monkey's eyes, and he instinctively swallowed his saliva. I've said it before, it's just about grabbing a bank. What a messy plan. Rush in, shoot each person, start loading the money and it's over. Pack your things and set off now. Red Hair took a deep breath, with a fierce aura in his eyes. He inadvertently lifted his arm, revealing strong muscles. Obviously, he has been dissatisfied with the robbery plan, created by several young brothers for a long time. Boss, I still think we should be a little more cautious. After all, we're just recently arrived on the Blackstreet. According to Scar, even if it's just a passerby here, it's not easy to provoke. The monkey cautiously suggested again. Red Hair sneered, his tone full of disdain. I don't think the Black Street is as exaggerated as it is described. What else? A lawless place. It's just a bunch of trash. In the half-month we've been here, haven't the people on the Black Street killed 4 or 5 too? What's so scary? When Scar joined the company, I felt like this guy was unreliable. When did I use my brain to handle things? Don't talk so much nonsense, pack up the guys, let's go. Do a big job. During the conversation, Red Hair casually pinned a cheap homemade pistol on the table around her waist and walked towards the door. The other few people stood up one after another and followed behind Red Hair. But we're just outside the Black Street. On the outskirts. The monkey wanted to say something more, but when he saw the impatient look in the boss's eyes, he still held back his words. Furthermore, with the boss's temper, it is highly likely that he will be beaten up. At this moment a rhythmic knocking on the door suddenly sounded. Hello, is this a bandit hideout? I want to join. The cheerful voice of the young man rang from outside the door, sounding particularly polite. Red-haired footsteps paused. The expressions of the younger brothers behind him also became tense. The monkey swallowed its saliva and instinctively looked at its boss. Damn it. You're scared. Open the door. Let me see what's playing around here. After seeing the performance of the younger brothers, Red Hair cursed and then pulled out the homemade pistol again, loaded it, and looked fierce. If we don't mention the issue of intelligence, you're quite brave. The monkey cautiously approached the door and opened a gap, looking at the young man standing outside with a low voice. Who is that? Didn't I say that? Coming for an interview. Suyang, with a bright smile on his face, pushed the door open and ignored the monkey guarding the door, walking directly into the room. As Suyang watched the crowd surrounding him, each holding a machete, dagger, and other weapons of varying sizes, he couldn't help but praise them. Just like in his dream, this bandit's den is indeed very professional. Let me introduce myself. Suyang. Male, 20 years old. Black Street indigenous. Skilled at. Oh, yes. I'm good at getting along with everyone. Suyang looked at Hongmao standing opposite him, his eyes clear, his expression sincere, and his warm smile like a spring breeze, giving people a natural sense of trust. Chapter 3. Petition. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Brother, have you come to the wrong place? As a professional junior, this situation must not allow Big Brother to directly talk to Suyang, as it will make Big Brother appear weak. The monkey still has a clear idea about this. So he stood up without hesitation, took the initiative to pick up the conversation, looked gloomy, and spoke. Isn't this a bandit hideout? Suyang was taken aback for a moment, looked around suspiciously, and then carefully looked at the weapon in the hands of a few people. He muttered to himself, just like the memory in a dream. What nonsense! We are all good citizens, how could we possibly rob? The monkey spoke confidently, but with his fierce expression, he seemed completely untrustworthy. So honest, just came to the Black Street. Why are you so vigilant? Just speak up openly about the robbery. This is not a shady job on the Black Street. Suyang seemed to understand something, and his smile reappeared on his face. Then he turned his gaze to Red Hair and said, Are you the helmsman? What does steering mean? Red Hair paused for a moment and instinctively replied. Suyang suddenly felt a little tired and said, It's just. Boss. Big shot. Head of the family. Carry a load. That's right, I'm their boss. Red Hair suddenly realized and coughed lightly, pretending to be majestic. Then, he carefully looked at Suyang and said, Local people from Black Street. Yes. Suyang smiled and nodded. Want to join in? Red Hair asked again, and Su Yang nodded again. I always feel that the people on the Black Street are not very straightforward when talking or doing things. Grinding and grinding. So, I'll ask you a question. If we want to grab the nearby autumn water bank, what do you think we should do? After confirming Su Yang's intention, Red Hair became less anxious and waved his hand, gesturing for the younger brothers to disperse. He himself sat on the chair with a broadsword and rolled up his sleeves to show off his strength, revealing his strong muscles. Is it Chioshui Bank? Just grab it directly. After analyzing for about half a second, Su Yang naturally replied. And this answer instantly lit up Red Hair's eyes. Yes, I said just grab it, but Scar insisted that this matter needs to be carefully planned. Balabala told me a lot, and I thought everyone on the Black Street was so timid. For a moment, Red Hair looked at Su Yang with admiration in his eyes. This person speaks and handles things, he has a bad temper. It's just a constant smile, it looks a bit uncomfortable. Okay, from today on, you can hang out with me, Red Hair spoke with a big grin. But at this moment, the monkey leaned over and whispered in Red Hair's ear, Big brother, be careful. In case this person is an undercover agent of the Lord's mansion. That's right. What if you're an undercover agent? Red Hair reacted with a hint of suspicion in her eyes, playing with the short knife in her hand with a fierce expression. The people outside the Black Street are really troublesome. Do you want to submit a petition? Su Yang sighed and looked weakly at Hong Mao, asking. Red Hair nodded and said, Of course, you can go out later and find a child on the street. Let's keep it simple, then do it. Damn it. What are you doing? Before Red Hair could finish speaking, her eyes suddenly widened and she looked at Su Yang with a roar. However, in just 2 seconds, Su Yang pulled out a dagger somewhere and stabbed the person next to him in the heart. Before the blood overflowed, he withdrew his hand and took a step to the side. The little brother didn't even have time to say a word, so he collapsed straight to the ground, losing his breath. Aren't you going to file a petition? Killing him is the fastest and most convenient. Su Yang looked at Hong Mao with an innocent expression on his face. Declaration of submission. You can't even kill him. Damn it. Red Hair and blue veins burst out, reaching out his hand and pointing at Su Yang's face with ferocity, but in the end, he didn't say a complete sentence. The monkey, along with several other little brothers, were completely scared and dumbfounded, obviously not having seen such a scene before. If you say you'll do it, then you'll do it. After killing someone, you'll be like a normal person. It is rumored from the outside world that Black Street is the darkest place in the entire Shanghai city. There are no laws or rules here, and they didn't quite see it before, until now a feeling called fear permeates their hearts. In front of me, the person who killed me, little brat, today. Red Hair angrily picked up the short knife from the table and walked towards Su Yang, clearly showing a murderous intent. Give it all to me, I must take him today. Boss. The monkey shuddered. This kind of ruthless person, even if he had to rely on too many people to kill him, he might end up being replaced. What if it's oneself who's unlucky? Although his behavior is indeed inappropriate, at least it proves that he is not a member of the Lord's mansion. City Lord's mansion, I dare not handle things like this. Although we have lost one brother, we have joined a stronger brother. After all, we made a profit. Watching the possibility of a fight at any moment, the monkey stood beside Red Hair, persuading at an extremely fast pace. The other little brothers nodded one after another, looking reasonable in their words. Red Hair stopped in his tracks and looked at the cold corpse on the ground. He took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed his anger, saying, Today's incident may not have happened, but from now on, no matter what you do, you must listen to me. Su Yang's face lit up with a smile again, he nodded, and then followed the example of other younger brothers. He took 2 steps back and stood beside Red Hair, saying, "Boss, let's go rob the bank quickly." "How did you know I was going to rob the Autumn Water Bank next door?" Red Hair froze. Seeing several younger brothers all looking at him with strange expressions, he waved his hand irritably and said, "Forget it, it's not important. Let's go." After speaking, he pushed open the door and walked out, standing on the street. A few people rushed out in unison, following behind him with fierce expressions. At first glance, it's someone who's going to do big things. "Where's your weapon?" In just a few minutes, Hong Mao had already stood with a few people on Hepping Street, opposite the branch of Friendship Road, at the Chioshui Bank. There was only one road between them. At this moment, the monkey looked at Su Yang with empty hands and asked with some confusion. "Ah. When I just stabbed that brother, I left it for him." Su Yang carefully recalled and responded earnestly. "No tools, how can we handle things later?" The monkey's face looked a bit ugly, and he looked around stealthily before lowering his voice and saying, "Are you going to rob in Chapter 4? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wait a moment, I'll go grab a handful." Su Yang nodded and glanced casually on the street, really running towards a polite-looking passerby. "Hello. Monkey people are all foolish." He just came to the Black Street because of a mistake and couldn't keep up with Su Yang's thinking for a moment. He suddenly grabbed him and said, "Are you crazy? Robbery is illegal." "I know. But as long as the person who was robbed doesn't report to the police, it's okay." Su Yang stopped in his tracks and looked at the monkey in confusion, saying very naturally, "Do you even have to rely on robbing the guy who works?" The monkey almost collapsed and lowered its voice, shouting, "Robbers, robbers! Is there a problem?" The puzzled expression on Su Yang's face became increasingly intense, and he couldn't understand why the monkey had such a fierce reaction. "The people outside, it's really troublesome. If you rob him first and raise the bank's alarm, what should we do if our next actions are exposed?" The monkey let out a long sigh and looked at the boss as if seeking help. But I don't think what he said is wrong." Red Mao carefully analyzed the conversation between the two and later agreed very much with Su Yang. A brilliant smile instantly appeared on Su Yang's face. "If you're not dead, maybe you can really live a little longer on the Black Street." He suddenly uttered a somewhat inexplicable sentence. Seeing the monkey still trying to persuade him, Su Yang felt a little helpless and said, "I won't snatch it, I'll borrow it." At this moment, the polite man was getting closer and closer to them. Su Yang suddenly took a step forward and stood in front of him. "Hello, can you lend me a knife?" Watching Su Yang suddenly stop him, the man instinctively took a step back and looked at Su Yang. "Why? Robbing banks. Lack of tools." Su Yang answered very candidly. The monkey's face turned black in an instant, and he looked at Su Yang with resentment. Suddenly, he regretted it. He had known he would have taken some risks before and fooled the boss into killing this guy. Anyone who is a normal person, even if they don't report it to the police, they can't borrow it from you. When the monkey's heart is crazy about roast, bank robbery. This one. Sure. The man looked at the Chioshui Bank across the street and seemed quite interested. He opened his briefcase in front of everyone, took out a dagger, handed it to Su Yang, and didn't forget to say, "Go." At this point, the monkey's brain is completely shut down. He no longer pondered why there was such a simple question as a dagger in a man's briefcase. People on the Black Street are all crazy. It's crazy. This sentence kept flickering in his mind and imprinted in his soul. "Thank you." Su Yang politely took the dagger, thanked her politely, and then looked at Hong Mao, saying, "Boss, I have tools now. Let's take action." What a waste of time. Damn it. Red Hair casually threw away the cigarette but in his hand and rushed towards the opposite side of the road. Su Yang and several younger brothers followed closely behind. The monkey was somewhat naive, trapped and blindly following him until the moment he rushed into the bank, when his slightly intelligent brain finally figured out a very serious question. Any passerby on the Black Street is so crazy that they dare to open a bank on the Black Street. Will it be even more ruthless? Customers who dare to openly deposit and withdraw money when it comes to killing people, don't you blink even more. Bank robbery can be done, but it needs to be carefully planned. Wait for me to step on it first. The words of the scar still echoed in his mind. But since when did they inexplicably rush over and rob the bank? I always feel there's something wrong. Also, the man who just lent them the dagger looked at them as if he was looking at a group of dead people. At this moment, the monkey completely regained consciousness and suddenly looked at the boss, wanting to express its analysis and judgment, but, dude, don't move. Robbery. Red Hair took the lead, standing at the center of the bank, raising his homemade pistol and firing it into mid-air. Everyone, hold your head in both hands. You guys. Squat down. Looking at several passers-by handling business in the bank, Red Hair shouted fiercely. Finally, he turned his gun and aimed it at the two security personnel at the bank, threatening to say, within 3 seconds, don't squat down, die. Several little brothers behind Hong Mao pulled out their daggers, short knives, and iron bars, cursing and smashing the surrounding objects as they saw the situation. At least in terms of momentum, I have grasped it. Of course, there are still 2 people who seem out of place. The monkey had a slight panic on its face, constantly looking around, and even crazily glaring at its old ambassador. Suyang stood still after entering the bank. Like waiting for something. What are you looking at me for? Tie these people up. I asked you to squat down, can't you hear me? Watching the monkey constantly casting seductive glances at him, Red Hair couldn't help but curse, then stared at the 2 security guards again, grinning with a ferocious smile. Do you think I dare not kill? Did the headquarters conduct a drill? A security guard completely ignored the threat from his red hair and looked at his colleague with a strange expression, curious and asking. My colleague sneered and said, when did you see the headquarters doing these things on Black Street? So. Does anyone really dare to rob our Chioshui bank? The security guard looked shocked and said, anyone on the Black Street who can provoke us doesn't look up to our little money. My colleague nodded faintly and said, so. We met Leng Tu-Chin. The 2 of them asked and answered each other, and in the end, they turned their heads in perfect harmony, casting their gaze on Red Hair with pity in their eyes. Security Guard A simple and unadorned tool for committing crimes. Security Guard B, there's not even a unified configuration. Security Guard A, it's obvious that he just arrived. Security Guard B, they are really lucky. Security Guard A, it's our good luck. Security Guard B, if I'm not mistaken, the gun in his hand was sold by Mr. Lee from Dongjikou. Security Guard A, that's right, the type that can only be fired once and then exploded. The 2 of them carefully discussed and analyzed this group of robbers, without any immediate intention of stopping them. Even the common people, who do business in the bank only glanced at them curiously and then proceeded to do business on their own. The internal atmosphere of the bank at this time, in layman's terms, is except for the robber who was very excited, everyone was calm. Please ask customer A061 to go to window 1 to handle the business. With the electronic sound system on, a common person sitting in a chair, queuing up, stood up and walked through the crowd with ease. The sharp-eyed monkey even saw that this person had a pistol pinned around his waist. And it's not the kind of shoddy goods they bought at Dongjikou with all their money. Chapter 5. Crossing the River Dragon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I said, I want to rob. Can't you understand? When I get angry, I really know how to kill people. This feeling of being ignored made Red Hair particularly angry. He let out a roar and without hesitation pulled the trigger at one of the security guards. Bang! A muffled sound. That rough homemade pistol just exploded out of thin air. Along with the red-haired right hand, it was blown apart. Under intense pain stimulation, red hair instinctively covered his right hand, but he didn't let out a mournful cry, only his blood-red eyes were full of confusion. Ha! No shouting. Security guard A has some doubts. Security guard E exclaimed, he's actually a man, but unfortunately he's a bit foolish. Yeah. No matter how strong the force is, without a brain, one cannot survive on the Black Street. Security guard A looked emotional. But security guard B refuted his idea. Your words are too absolute. On East Street, who dares to provoke fools? The madman on Central Street is also a taboo on Black Street. Security guard A nodded in agreement. On the Black Street, even hearing these two names made their bodies slightly chilly. Especially according to rumors, those who dare to approach and provoke them seem to have died. He died tragically. As a result, the area they live in is assumed to be surrounded by people who dare not take a glance. As for what it looks like, not a person of the same rank, who dares to have nothing to do. Come over and take a look. Curiosity can be deadly. Hello. You're not right. The nickname Madman is madman, madness and foolishness are different. After entering, Su Yang, who had never had a sense of existence, suddenly retorted seriously. When the two security guards looked at him, they threw the dagger away from their hearts and raised their hands. Yo! There's another knowledgeable person. Since you know how to handle things, why do you dare to cause trouble here? Security guard Jia looked at Su Yang and couldn't help but laugh. He didn't pay any attention to him, but shifted his gaze back to red hair and joked, Hey buddy, come out to work. The thing isn't hard enough. Do you want me to lend you a hand? As he spoke, he leisurely took out a delicate pistol from his waist, loaded it, and aimed it at red hair, saying, although it's not a valuable item, it's definitely not going to explode. As the words fell, security guard A suddenly pulled the trigger and hit red hair's thigh. Red hair let out a muffled groan and half knelt on the ground. Blood flowed down the wound onto the clean white tiles, staining them red. You can clean it yourself later. Security guard E frowned slightly, with a dissatisfied expression on his face. Hee, you know, according to the rules, guns are not allowed on the Black Street. I finally had the chance to play openly and honestly. Security guard Jia excitedly licked his lips and said, but this guy is indeed a tough guy. He didn't even shout. Hee, are you blind? You hit him on the main artery, and he fainted from the pain. Security guard B rolled his eyes and said sarcastically. I thought there was a river crossing dragon. Although we are on the Black Street and can only be considered as peripheral residents, we shouldn't be treated as dishes either. Looking at red hair who had already fainted, security guard Jia was disinterested. He put away his gun, turned around and took out a long knife from the service desk. He walked up to red hair in front of the group of robbers, grabbed his hair with one hand, and dragged him out of the bank. The bright red blood painted a long line on the pure white tiles, completely crushing the last line of defense in the hearts of these robbers. They trembled and threw their weapons onto the ground, trembling all over and motionless. About half a minute later, security guard A returned alone, with only a few blood stains on his hands. Solved it? Security guard B asked. Security guard A nodded and said, according to the rules, the body has been hung on the wall. As he spoke, he turned his head with a smile and looked at the other robbers, including the monkey. Su Yang said, don't worry, according to our autumn water rules, only the leader will be killed. Upon hearing his words, everyone instinctively breathed a sigh of relief, and the monkey sat limp on the ground. After all, compared to the dead, only the living can sell for a good price. Security guard Jia added a sentence as if talking to himself, but this sentence made everyone present fall into an ice cave. All right. I finally had a chance to earn some extra money and then scared people to death. Tie up the people and throw them into the basement. Security guard B impatiently interrupted A's words. The two of them were so magnanimous at the service desk, pulling out hemp ropes one by one, and lined up to tie everyone up. They were already frightened and had no courage to resist. Their eyes were lifeless, their pupils dilated, and they only had one thought in their minds. This is at the legendary Black Street. What kind of eating without vomiting bones? Compared to the rest of Shanghai City, it's simply a fairy palace. Can we change the bundling method? This kind of bundling will leave marks and be very painful. Looking at security guard B standing in front of him, Su Yang smiled and said. His actions were exceptionally strange. He remained motionless from the moment he entered the door, and now he even had no intention of resisting. Everyone is bound like this, we must treat everyone equally. Security guard B chuckled and said. Su Yang's smile remained unchanged and he said, after all, they are old residents of the Black Street. Give them some face. TSK, even the elderly dare to cause trouble in our autumn water. Security guard E was amazed, although he did not respond openly, he still gave Su Yang a different tying method. Life can't go on anymore, we have to find a way. I can't sleep without doing some things. Su Yang had no consciousness of being someone else's spoils of war, and even interacted with the security guard in front of him for a few words before being stuffed into the basement by the security guard and the others, and then the heavy iron door was closed. For a moment, the basement, which was originally somewhat bright, completely darkened. Everyone, there was a little incident, I'm sorry. The two security guards returned to the lobby. Security guard A diligently wiped the bloodstains on the ground, while security guard B sincerely apologized to his clients with an apologetic smile. Although there were only two security guards, they handled everything comprehensively. As for those customers who come to handle business, they have no objections to this and follow the process to handle their own business. Apart from the body hanging at the bank entrance, no one could have imagined that a robbery had just occurred here. Similarly, half an hour has passed and no one from the Lord's mansion has come to investigate why there were dead people at the bank entrance. Only occasional passers-by, when looking at the corpse at the bank entrance, show a hint of curiosity in their eyes and silently leave. As if everyone here has an indifferent attitude towards life. Human life here, it's the cheapest item. Chapter 6. Fools Must Die. You are listening at novelfull.audio. An empty basement, endless darkness. These robbers can even hear noticeable echoes with just a slight movement of their bodies. Most of them have not yet recovered from their boss's death. All of this came so suddenly, without giving them any time to mentally prepare. Just as everyone's fear reached a certain threshold, a flash of light suddenly lit up in this dark basement. It's still more comfortable like this. Su Yang, who was originally bound in the corner, had somehow broken free from his constraints and even made no sound throughout the process. And this guy didn't know where to pull out a lighter, illuminating their cold hearts with that faint flame. Su Yang stood still, pondering for a few seconds, and then walked towards the monkey like this. The monkey's eyes lit up. Fortunately, at that time, I persuaded the boss not to kill Su Yang. People who hang out on the Black Street all year round are different. I never expected that one day, my wisdom would give me a chance to survive. Thinking about it, the monkey struggled on the ground and took the initiative to approach Su Yang, looking at him eagerly. And then he watched with his own eyes as Su Yang squatted beside him and took off his coat. Taking off one's coat is a troublesome task due to being tied with a rope. Fortunately, Su Yang borrowed a dagger, cut his coat, stacked it together, and ignited it with a lighter. In an instant, the room became even brighter and even warmer. What? Why don't you help me untie it? The monkey curled up in a very uncomfortable position in the corner, tilted its head, and looked at Su Yang incredulously. Su Yang sat in front of the fire, puzzled. Why should I help you untie it? Because we are teammates. You saved us, more people make it easier to escape. The monkey was shocked. Why would Su Yang still ask such a simple logic? We are not teammates, we are colleagues. But the boss died and no one paid me a salary, so our company dissolved. Since it has been disbanded, why should I save you? Su Yang carefully analyzed the logic behind it, took the initiative to explain, and then lowered his head slightly, as if pondering something. After a moment, he raised his head again and smiled at the crowd, saying, "Moreover, I can't escape. In the fragments of my dream, I no longer remember where you were sold. This is very important. I'm going over." Under the glow of the fire, Su Yang's gaze was so clear and honest, giving people a feeling of trustworthiness. But in the current situation, who wants this feeling? You're not taking us out. The last nerve in the monkey's heart completely collapsed at this moment, and his eyes became empty. Black Street. Black Street. The people here are all demons. At this moment, even the monkey's voice became a bit crazy. The next second, the monkey turned its head with a grim expression and looked fiercely at Su Yang. "Boss, what would you do if you wanted to rob a bank?" Your answer at the time was, "Just grab it." So from the beginning, you just wanted us to die, right? Liar, you scammer. After thinking about this, the monkey became even more frantic and wished to turn over now, even if it was a bite, to bite off a piece of Su Yang's flesh. But Su Yang smiled and shook his head, took 2 steps forward, casually cut off the other person's coat next to him, stuffed it into the fire to prevent it from going out, and then leaned in front of the monkey and squatted down. Due to his back facing the fire, most of Su Yang's face was in shadow, and his smile also showed a hint of coldness out of thin air. The boss asked, "What would I do if I went to grab it?" So, what I answered is no problem. Scars require planning, and I don't need it. As he spoke, Su Yang had lost his interest in continuing chatting with the monkey. He stood up lazily and continued cutting through the jackets of the other people, filling the fire from time to time. The monkey sat aimlessly in the corner, silent, muttering something from time to time, like a fool. Did there used to be candles here? Nearly 20 minutes later, Su Yang's surprised voice suddenly came. He quickly walked to the corner, picked up a piece of candle, lit it, and then sat back satisfied, waiting quietly. Although he had already broken free from the rope, he had no intention of escaping. Even so far, these people are not clear about what Su Yang really wants to do. Every action this guy makes is different from a normal person. The sky is boundless and there is no trace to find. Let's say he's crazy, but most of the time he's no different from a normal person. Saying he is a normal person, normal people can't even handle things like him. An entire hour passed, and neither of the security guards appeared. During this time, Su Yang even leaned back in the corner to sleep and, after waking up, he didn't know where to pull out an apple. His apple-eating voice was particularly clear in the quiet basement, causing everyone to know that their future fortune was going to be difficult, but still couldn't help but swallow their saliva. To the end the candle that lit their only hope in their hearts has quietly been extinguished. So when the 2 security guards pushed open the door again, for some reason, these people breathed a sigh of relief. The unknown is the most frightening. And now, at least they can know how they will die. Although it may sound sad, it does make people feel a little better. Security guard A raised a flashlight and looked around. When the light shone on Su Yang, his eyebrows furrowed slightly and his eyes gradually became wary. "Since you broke free, why didn't you run?" His voice was a bit cold. "Poor people can't afford to eat. If you sell me, maybe the new boss will like me and give me a decent job." Su Yang sat in the corner, leaning against the wall, and said with a smile. Security guard B quietly leaned over to A and murmured in his ear, "This person is not a good troublemaker." "Nonsense, I'm not a fool." Security guard Jia rolled his eyes and said, "He clearly has his own ideas when he does this. As long as it doesn't harm our interests, I'm too lazy to provoke him. Let's sell normally, and after selling, it won't have much to do with us." Security guard B nodded lightly. So, in front of everyone, they escorted others out of the basement. As for Su Yang, they didn't even take a glance. If you're willing to follow us, just follow us. I don't want to follow you. If I leave, we won't pursue you either. This it is the inherent caution of Black Street residents. Anyone who feels that you pose such a slight threat to me will not easily offend you. Still, that sentence, fool on the Black Street, life won't last long. Chapter 7. How to Prove That I Am Me. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. As expected, even though they had already treated Su Yang as a transparent person, Su Yang still carried his hands behind them, following behind them. Compared to the people who were tied up and looked like meat tickets in front of him, he was more like a security guard's accomplice. At this point, the bank had already closed and the outside sky had become dark. The security guard opened the rolling shutter door of the bank. A truck stopped at the entrance of the bank at some point, and the truck driver crouched on the roadside smoking. After hearing the commotion here, he glanced at it and remained silent, still smoking on his own. And the two security guards escorted these kidnappers and stuffed them into the car. When only Su Yang was left, they paused for a moment. Brother, although I can't figure out your path, since you want to take our boat, you must follow our rules. If you want to get on the car, you still need to tie the rope. After you get on the car, anything else that happens has nothing to do with us. Security guard A looked at Su Yang and lowered his voice, saying. Security guard B, on the other hand, seemed to be looking very casually at the direction of the truck driver, standing in a position that happened to block Su Yang. No problem. The rules still need to be explained. Su Yang smiled and raised his arms. Seeing Su Yang cooperating very well with him, security guard A breathed a sigh of relief and re-tied him up, delivering the person to the car. The truck driver just finished smoking, lazily got up, and walked over. 6. They are all healthy males. Security guard B smiled and spoke, looking in a good mood. Even the truck driver couldn't help but envy him and muttered, "You're lucky, security guard. After you go back, the money will be transferred to your account." He didn't even have the interest to check the vehicle, so he got on the car, started the fire, and left. On the outskirts of this Black Street, no one dares to deceive their boss yet. What exactly is that guy's purpose? What's the matter with him? Let's settle the balance between people and goods. The rest of the matter has nothing to do with us. That's right, I'm lucky today. Have a drink tonight. The two security guards watched as the vehicle left, smiling as they walked away in the darkness. The truck didn't drive for too long, but after about half an hour, it stopped. Accompanied by the sound of the car door opening, sturdy figures holding iron bars gazed at the people inside the carriage. And just as the carriage opened, Su Yang took the initiative to jump out of the car, with the hemp rope tied in his hand disappearing again at some point. So it's here. I have a slight impression. Looking at the surrounding scene, Su Yang's mind once again conjured up a very blurry image and nodded lightly. Thank you. He turned around and looked at the truck driver beside him, expressing his gratitude very politely. Then, he walked towards a warehouse ahead with great familiarity. Do you know whose territory this is? If you're here to cause trouble, you've picked the wrong place. The truck driver stared at Su Yang's back and spoke coldly. Su Yang's footsteps did not stop, but he still walked towards the warehouse on his own and said, I don't know, but whoever it is, they probably won't care about me. Brother, do you have a conversation? The truck driver furrowed his brows and stopped the thugs who wanted to charge over, asking again. Central Street. They like to call me crazy. Su Yang's gentle voice continued to echo in mid-air, but the truck driver had already frozen in place, with cold sweat barely visible on his forehead. Crazy. How could he stoop to this barren place on the outskirts of Black Street? Suppressing the fear in his heart, the truck driver boldly shouted again, "It's not that he doesn't believe in your identity, but he still needs to provide a certificate so that I can go back and complete the task. I can't even determine my identity, let's just let you wander here, I still can't escape the word die. But as long as we confirm, here. Feel free." When saying these words, the truck driver's body was trembling. Let the madman prove his identity. Just this one thing alone is enough to blow my name on this black street for a lifetime. It's just that I've always heard that crazy people are unpredictable. That's right. But how should we prove it? My name on my ID card is not called crazy either. Suyang paused in his footsteps, turned around, and looked at the truck driver with a distressed expression on his face. "Can I perform a murder for you? I kill quickly." "I save people quickly too." Suyang seemed to have thought of something, his eyes lit up, and as the sound fell, a dagger silently appeared in his hand. He held the dagger and looked around, as if searching for a target. "I can kill the person to the brink of death first and then rescue them." Upon hearing Su Yang's grumbling, the thugs who were already at a distance from him frantically retreated backwards. As for the robbers who had already been bound, Su Yang had already closed the doors of the open carriages as early as he was thinking. This scene is so familiar. A few hours ago, Su Yang also performed a performance of, on investment names, for them, no need. I believe you. You are crazy. Even if I was clumsy and misread today, I still accepted it. The truck driver suddenly spoke up and cautiously took a few steps back, maintaining a distance of at least tens of meters from Su Yang. Even so, he felt that there was no guarantee for his safety. The three taboos of Black Street, regardless of which one, on the Black Street, it is a symbol of invincibility. No way. An unexpected thing happened without any surprise. Faced with the truck driver's concession, Su Yang stubbornly shook his head and said, "I must prove that I am me." Seeing Su Yang's attitude, the truck driver was almost crying. This must be that crazy person. Anyone who is not crazy will be entangled with this problem. He took a deep breath and made his expression appear unusually sincere. "I already believe it." "No, you don't believe it." Su Yang shook his head again and slowly walked towards the crowd. As Su Yang approached, the truck driver couldn't help but swallow his saliva. How can I prove that I am me? It's really a thought-provoking question. Firstly, it is necessary to prove the existence of me. We also need to prove. Su Yang was completely lost in thought, almost unconsciously walking towards the direction of the truck driver and those thugs. If he's not crazy, I definitely don't believe him. Run. At this moment, the truck driver's heart was only filled with panic, with almost no hesitation. He let out a low shout, turned around, and ran at an extremely fast speed. The thugs also came to their senses and rushed to flee. Chapter 8. Doors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A madman can kill everyone present, and I can also kill everyone present. Can this prove? I'm crazy about Central Street. Suddenly, Su Yang regained his senses, and when he lifted his head to look ahead, it was already empty. These people have long lost track of where they went. Even the big truck was abandoned and left alone on the empty ground. Why did they leave? They left. Who can prove to me that I am? Su Yang gradually regained his sanity, and his eyes became clear from their previous dazed state. We still need to prepare more witnesses. A smile appeared on Su Yang's lips. He first picked up a flashlight that others had lost when running away on the roadside, then walked to the position of the truck carriage, opened the car door, and looked at the pair of frightened eyes in front of him. Su Yang's smile became even brighter. Please remember my face. My name is Su Yang. It's the lunatic on Central Street. 10 million. Don't forget. During his speech, Su Yang turned on his flashlight and shone it on his face. The fierce robbers swear that they will never forget this face in their lifetime. There is only one adjective in my mind. The devil with a smile. These guys, who are considered extremely vicious outside the entire black street of Shanhaking, are now like obedient babies, wrapped in hemp rope and sitting in a row, like obedient babies, nodding neatly and uniformly. What is my name? Suyang looked at them and asked gently. Woo-woo, woo-woo. They spoke neatly again. Don't forget. If you see others in the future, remember to describe my appearance to them. Goodbye. Suyang warmly waved to them before turning around and leaving only a group of robbers looking at each other. If it weren't for Su Yang's lewdness and his mouth being blocked, they would really want to look at Su Yang's back and curse, "Can you loosen our rope before you leave?" Unfortunately, these words could only be held in their hearts, and they eventually gathered together, huddled together for warmth, trying to untie the rope with the help of each other. The whole truck started moving rhythmically, full of a strange feeling. And on the other side, Suyang stood at the entrance of the warehouse and pushed hard. Accompanied by a piercing sound, the warehouse door slowly opened. The warehouse is approximately 200 square meters, with a few dim yellow lights on, barely able to see the environment inside the warehouse. In the corner, several figures curled up on the ground, trembling instinctively when they heard the sound of the door opening. It wasn't until they saw that the stranger was Su Yang that they were stunned for a moment. Su Yang crossed over them and walked towards the depths of the warehouse on his own. And these few people got excited and ran away like crazy, disappearing into the darkness in an instant. It's this door, right? Suyang stands at the deepest point of the warehouse. Surrounded by objects that were clearly dated, they were already covered in dust. In the corner, a dismantled wooden door was casually discarded. By the light, one could vaguely see patterns printed on the wooden door, but they were mostly obscured by dust. Looking at the wooden door, Suyang suddenly frowned and his face turned slightly pale. Images kept flickering in his mind, and the speed of flickering became faster and faster. Under strong stimulation, his brain seemed to explode at any moment. Suyang was panting heavily, with a drop of sweat dripping from his forehead. He reached out his hand and leaned on the nearby shelf to avoid falling. At the same time, the seemingly ordinary wooden door suddenly shook slightly. Really? It hurts. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since. I've never felt this much pain before. Why? Why is this scene, in my dream? Not in my dream. Even in this state, Suyang remained rational, his blood-red gaze fixed on the wooden door. In a daze, the flickering images in Suyang's mind finally slowed down. Although it is still broken, at least it can be seen clearly. The screen pauses. It's like a slideshow. The first picture. The scene is the same as now, except that Suyang in the picture looks much better and pushes open the wooden door in front of him, feeling a bit tired. As the wooden door opened, a dazzling golden light illuminated the warehouse. It seems that one can still vaguely hear the ethereal fairy sound. On the other side of the door, there is another world. Golden bricks and blue tiles, cranes soaring, magnificent. A kind-looking old man, with his hands on his back, stood on the clouds and smiled at Suyang. He reached out his palm and caressed Suyang's forehead from the air. The screen is interrupted at this point. The second one. Great changes in the world. Xian Lu Kai. All beings in this mortal world can embark on the path of immortality. Even as long as you lift your head, you can see immortal palaces and mountains standing on top of the clouds and mist. And Suyang is already the most talented person in this world. The once hated Black Street lunatic has become an idol envied by everyone in the blink of an eye. In that scene Suyang stood proudly on the sea, and the onlookers were ignorant. And Suyang smiled and fell with a sword. Seawater diversion. Set off countless waves. The third one. From that distant fairy palace, a ladder of heaven has fallen, leading straight to Su Yang's feet. At this time, Su Yang was already middle-aged. Fairy swayed in mid-air, playing the piano and scattering flowers, waiting for Su Yang to step into the fairyland. Far away, the cultivators looked at Su Yang without hiding their envy. Ordinary people are even more prone to kneeling on the ground. So far. Screen interruption. Su Yang regained his senses from that vague state, and the pain in his mind gradually eased. The wooden door stopped trembling, and the faint light emitted dissipated, returning to its usual state. The screen is still. Everything has returned to normal. It is worth mentioning that Su Yang's expression and actions at this moment are consistent with those in the first scene at the beginning. That is to say, the door is right in front of me. As long as Su Yang follows the instructions in the picture and gently pushes open this door, the future will be like in the picture, achieving enlightenment and becoming immortal. Although all of this may sound too bizarre, it seems that this incredible thing suddenly becomes understandable behind the scenes. It seems to be a good road. Strong strength, perfect ending. But Su Yang looked at the door in front of him with a smirk on his lips. According to the description in the picture, at this moment, I have already placed my hand on the door. But now, I haven't. If everything just revealed is the future, then at this moment, the future. It seems to have changed. Chapter 9. Personal Evidence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su Yang's whispers were clearly audible in this silent warehouse. You always strive to prove to me that what I see is the future. The future will not be broken. Hee hee. Su Yang smiled. The smile seemed a bit eerie, and he walked slowly to the wooden door with one hand resting on the frame. It seemed to feel the breath of Su Yang, and the wooden door shook gently again, as if expressing a joyful emotion. Sometimes, in order to make people believe that everything he sees is the future, it takes a long, long time to lay out. But to expose lies, it only takes one action, even a second. You should be very eager for me to push you away. After all, you have been pestering me for a long time. Su Yang's voice was so gentle, but the next second, his hand caressing the wooden door suddenly clenched its fist and slammed it hard on the door frame, making a muffled sound. The wooden door seemed a bit dazed by the blow. Even the tremor stopped. I hold grudges very well. Even if I forget everything in this world, I cannot forget that there is a door that has been giving me a headache for a long time. So, when you made me sleep for 6 months and made me have a splitting headache, it's destined that I won't open you no matter what. As he spoke, Su Yang looked around and finally found a rusty axe in the corner. Without any hesitation, he swung it towards the wooden door. I wasted a long time trying to find you. Becoming immortal. Flying up. Is the immortal voice ethereal? At this moment, Su Yang looked somewhat pathological, even his tone of voice had a hint of madness, and every sentence fell, he would chop the axe out. Bang! Bang! In the quiet warehouse, only the sound of Su Yang swinging his axe echoed incessantly. Unconsciously, the wooden door was riddled with scars. But Su Yang was still smiling. Laugh and chop it. Until a strand of bright red liquid flowed out from the wound on the wooden door, and a faint and eerie howl could be heard from inside the door. But this obviously illogical scene was directly ignored by Su Yang. So. You can bleed. Xian, shouldn't we be omnipotent? Immortal. Also afraid of pain. Su Yang looked increasingly excited, with only this wooden door in his eyes and nothing else, focused on chopping it down. Until a certain force was too strong, the already corroded axe handle snapped in response. If I had known this thing was a door, I would have brought a good axe in advance. Su Yang scratched his head and became distressed again. Then, as if thinking of something, his eyes lit up and he dug out a lighter in his pocket. He then threw his coat onto the ground, lit it, and threw it onto the wooden door. In a daze, the howling inside the wooden door grew louder and sounded very painful. And Su Yang was enjoying the scene in front of him happily. Under the firelight, the wooden door was completely burned down. If you can really reflect the future, you will definitely not choose me to push you away. Looking at the pitch-black charcoal on the ground, Su Yang smiled and expressed his feelings. But the next second, Su Yang. A venomous roar could be faintly heard in mid-air. Under the charcoal, a bright light rushed out and penetrated into Su Yang's eyebrows. The resentful voice came to an abrupt end. Everything seems to return to tranquility. Is it the kind of method in novels that is similar to dying together? Or a curse? Su Yang's eyes instantly flickered with a dazzling light, appearing not only devoid of fear, but also unusually excited. If you die easily, it's too boring. So, we can play slowly. Su Yang murmured to himself. The gentle breeze blew by, and the light bulb hanging above the warehouse swayed slightly, dragging Su Yang's shadow for an extremely long time. In a daze, a pitch-black door seemed to be placed behind his shadow, appearing exceptionally mysterious and full of vicissitudes. But as the light bulb shook again, the shadow disappeared again. Su Yang stood in the same place and waited for a long time, only to find that he had not been affected in any way, nor had he experienced any skin decay, so he walked out of the warehouse feeling somewhat disappointed. Perhaps there are coincidences in this world, or perhaps some people are born with clogged teeth when drinking cold water. At the moment when Su Yang walked out of the warehouse gate, several fierce robbers happened to be helping each other, untying the hemp rope and jumping off the truck. And outside the factory the truck driver also synchronized with his thugs and carefully touched them back, wanting to see if Su Yang had left. As Su Yang walked out of the factory building, the atmosphere suddenly became subtle. Run! The truck driver hardly hesitated, shouted softly again, turned around, and ran at a speed comparable to the last time he ran away. Let's run too. The fierce robbers were just inexperienced, not stupid, and almost instantly realized that they were learning from truck drivers and fleeing hastily outside this abandoned factory. I don't know if it's a herd mentality, or if they subconsciously feel that this seemingly lifeless truck driver is much kinder than Su Yang. They actually chose the direction of the truck driver's escape, one in front and one behind, disappearing into the darkness. Monkey. It seems like the monkey is still in the car. What's the situation with Donima? You still care about the monkeys? In the blink of an eye, there was no one in the empty space. Only a vague sound echoed in mid-air. It seems that there is still a whimpering sound in the carriage of the truck. They proved for me. Am I me? Having someone to prove it is indeed much more convenient. Su Yang was puzzled and then looked around, got into the truck, started it, and it all went smoothly. This seems to be in the suburbs, and if you walk back, it will be very tiring. Picking up a car to drive would be much more convenient. Just looking at Su Yang's departure route, it seems that it is not his own Central Street, but on the other side of East Street. Specifically Chioshui Bank, Hepping Street, Friendship Road branch. Hold your head, the madman is chasing us. The chase is getting tighter and tighter. On a remote wilderness path. The thug heard the commotion coming from behind and said to the truck driver with a fearful expression on his face. The truck driver's face was extremely gloomy. Hold your head, it's not a problem to escape like this. How about we fight him? I don't believe he can kill us all alone. The thug was also a fierce character, with a strong killing intent in his tone, and he was holding a machete tightly in his hand. Are you crazy or am I crazy? Do you know who that person is? You don't believe he can kill us all, I believe it. The truck driver lowered his voice and let out a roar. Chapter 10. Borrowing and Returning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hold your head, that's not right. The footsteps were becoming more and more chaotic, and it was obvious that they were not alone. Another 5 minutes have passed. The thug running at the back carefully listened and suddenly spoke up. The truck driver was taken aback for a moment, then seemed to have thought of something and suddenly stopped in place, with a slight twitch in the corners of his mouth and a surge of anger in his eyes. There are no fools who can get ahead on the Black Street. Even if it's just the periphery. With just a little association, you can guess what kind of situation it is. Under the reputation of being a madman, I seem a bit too nervous. Get ready to take action. I'll see those meat tickets in a moment, fight me to the death. This is the first time in my life that I have been scared away by a few meat tickets for so long. The truck driver was panting heavily. Those thugs who are used to being fierce on weekdays have already been suppressed with anger tonight, looking at the back with an unpleasant expression. About a minute later, several figures appeared in their view. Have we managed to escape? I'll turn myself in at the Lord's mansion when I go back. I'd rather squat down than come to the Black Street. That's right, compared to that, prison is heaven. Vaguely, one could still hear the voices of them discussing with each other. And then when they suddenly lifted their heads, they found themselves surrounded by a group of strong men without realizing it. The iron bars were fiercely whipped at them, causing them to scream in agony. The scene was once bloody, with even 2 iron bars bent. The entire violent behavior lasted for a full 20 minutes, and the fierce robbers had already collapsed to the ground, looking at the pitch-black night sky with only painful despair in their eyes. If they don't bully their female classmates, they won't drop out of school. If you don't drop out of school, you won't know your boss. If you don't know the boss, you naturally won't come to the Black Street. I won't end up like this. For a moment, only regret remained in their hearts. It's just that everything is already too late. The truck driver casually picked up an iron rod on the ground and dragged it towards several people. In the blurry view of one of them, he casually lifted the iron rod high and then suddenly smashed it down. Afterwards, he became unconscious. A bunch of damn guys. Watch them and go back after dawn. Contact the buyer well and don't waste any of their belongings, understand? After distancing himself from Su Yang, his demeanor became elegant again. He watched the thugs calmly command him, while he took out his phone and walked to the corner to report his situation to the boss. As for the fierce robbers who fainted on the ground, no one paid attention. It seems that their value is just a bunch of organs in their stomachs. Morning. The warm sunshine splashed on the street, looking peaceful. The half-collapsed psychological counseling clinic still looks like that, but the sign has been removed and replaced with a knife shop, and an elderly person is leisurely cleaning up debris. As for the car that rushed into the room, its whereabouts are unknown. Su-young parked the truck opposite Choshui Bank. A few spirited robbers, a place to prepare. This is the starting point of their dreams. It is also the end point of their dreams. In just one day, they had already rewritten their lives, except for Su-young. Not right. The monkey is still here. And he also returned to the place where this dream began. But Su-young was standing on the street sunbathing, he was tied up in a truck. Actually, if strictly speaking, red hair is also here. He was right across the street, hanging on the wall to the left of the bank, with blood already drained. He looked at them from a distance and barely managed to get a shot. The bank opens on time. Security guard A stood at the entrance of the bank and was momentarily stunned when he saw the familiar truck. Then he saw Su-young standing at the bank entrance. Su-young smiled brightly at the security guard from a distance across the road. The weather is warm. But the security guard was like falling into an ice cave, emitting a chill all over his body. This person coming back. And he's also driving that guy's car. What exactly happened last night? Security guard A took a deep breath, decisively suppressed his curiosity, and also tried to squeeze out a smile. After paying tribute to Su-young, he turned around without hesitation and crawled back into the bank. No matter what happens, at least one thing is beyond doubt. That Suyang is not easy to provoke. You must stay away. Fortunately, that mysterious and unpredictable guy didn't have the idea of coming to the bank to talk to them about the past. He just stood seriously on the street, as if searching for something. About an hour has passed. A polite man hurriedly passed by holding a briefcase. Suyang's eyes lit up and he leaned in. Thank you for your dagger. Although I didn't use it. The man frowned deeply all the way, as if thinking about something. Suddenly, Suyang's voice came to his ears, making him stunned and vigilant as he looked around. Looking at his slightly familiar face, the man shifted his gaze to the dagger in his hand, feeling a bit dazed. Successfully. The man instinctively made a polite remark and then saw the red-haired corpse hanging on the wall. Failed. What a pity. Suyang smiled and said, but there was no sign of regret on his face. Actually, you don't have to return it to me. I am willing to support every young person's dream. The man took the dagger and seemed to feel a little better, then smiled and said. Suyang shook his head seriously and said, no, I said it's a loan. If you borrow it, you have to repay it. Borrow. I have to pay it back. The man murmured and repeated Suyang's words, as if he had thought of something. He looked at Suyang in shock, with a hint of fear in his eyes. I have something else to do, let's go first. As he spoke, the man picked up his briefcase again and hurriedly left, not even daring to look back. If I remember correctly, this sentence is the catchphrase of that crazy person on Central Street. I'm afraid I might have met a big shot. It's just that meeting big shots elsewhere is one's own luck, but on this black street, meeting big shots, it's deadly. 18-year-old cute new author, writing a book for the first time, so nervous. Seeking comments, rewards, and updates. Love you all. Unlock the gift list first.